What's up, everybody? 016 Jet here, coming at you with a brand new Valorant video. And in this video, we gotta break down something special where GameRev actually got to sit down with an interview with Riot Joe Ziegler, and he talks about potentially new agents, new maps, and the future of agent and map banning. So we got to break it all down so that we know what the future looks like for Valorant. Smash that like, subscribe if you enjoy the content. And for those of you who want to level up your game, GameLeap.com is the one place that you'll find everything you need. From in-depth guides, advanced tutorials, tips and tricks. GameLeap.com subscribers have seen consistent progress in rank ups, and you can too. All you gotta do is click down below right now. But without further ado, let's jump into the video. So basically, this is a series of questions and answers asked by GameRev themselves, asking Joe Ziegler. So I'm gonna read it pretty much word for word. I'm gonna quote it, and then we're gonna talk about it afterwards. Quote, "Ever since the launch of Valorant in June, Riot Games stated their intentions of releasing 6 agents per year. We already have 3 new agents and 1 new map. If we were to project this progress rate in the future, how do you think the release of additional agents would shift the meta of the game?" End quote. And then Ziegler responds saying, "Every time we are creating a new character, we are thinking of abilities that change what we know about the game at the current time and can shift the meta. Our role system, which is the idea about having sentinels, duelists, and the like, are all built around the idea of sort of creating role archetypes that allow us to expand more characters into each one while still retaining the kind of structure you see in the game today." He follows up stating, quote, "As we sort of expand, I think the meta will shift, but it will remain in some sort of role framework as you see currently." Basically, to sum up what Ziegler is saying about this is, every single time they release an agent, they want it to challenge the meta in some way. They want it to have an impact over the actual game, and they really challenge what people are thinking or what people think about the abilities of the game in that given time and shift the meta as a result. Now, that being said, they won't ever really deviate very far from the roles that we have right now. The sentinels, duelists, controllers, and initiators, these are gonna be the boxes that characters are in, so it might seem unlikely that we're gonna see characters that really encompass multiple of these boxes, and it seems that characters are gonna have a certain amount of identity that ties them to the role going forward. The next question said this: "Do you think with the addition of new agents, is the concept of hero banning or role locking something you would consider in the future? For example, players will pre-lock what they want to play, whether it's duelist, sentinel, or other roles, so they do not have to fail in roles that they are not very adept at, or would you prefer giving players the freedom to shape their own team composition and meta?" This is actually a really important question, and I think one that a lot of us have on our minds. We understand the concept of having ultimate flexibility and not having Riot themselves dictate metas like you have to play 1 controller, 2 duelists, and just giving players the freedom to experiment. However, if way too many people are just locking like 4 or 5 duelists in every single game, perhaps it might be something considering, because at the very least, games that have a baseline of things that are needed is better than freedom chaos. Am I right? And while I still don't know what I feel about hero bans or role locking myself, let's listen to what Riot Ziegler has to say about the matter. Quote, "Honestly, I think we are still open to banning. We did not really put it in the first iteration of the game or even up till now, largely because the number of characters was fairly small and banning felt like an extreme thing. The more maps and characters get larger, the more likely we are to reinvestigate that and see whether or not banning is something to consider." Now, to follow up with this, about role locking, Ziegler says, quote, "It is a lot harder on the sort of matching and queue side when we first investigated it. We are looking into the future if we want to do something like role locking or something where it's easier to determine what agent you want to play before getting started and try to queue into that, so it makes it easier for you to know what role you are going to be playing in the future." So essentially, both agent banning and even role queue is still actively on the table. Especially agent bans is something that they're actively considering, especially as the maps and characters get larger. But the thing is, agent bans are very different from role locking. First off, if you think about agent bans, that's typically something to help balance a power level issue or find specific counter strategies within a meta. For instance, if there's a character that is really strong, let's say Jet, you want to ban and get it out of there, you no longer have to play around that certain playstyle, and you as a team can build a composition that might be weak to Jet's aggressive strategy or hopping ability, but you don't have to deal with that So that's the way to artificially create diversity game to game without actually needing Riot themselves to balance the meta. You're just gonna have a lot more diversity in your games, and there isn't gonna be one hardened set of characters that always see play, because it can constantly get banned and different characters could get banned and things like that. But role locking is gonna be vastly different, because role locking ideally is you are essentially queuing for a role that will be filled by a team. And perhaps what Riot would have to do is maybe every single team has to have one of each role and maybe one flex role, or 4 of each role and maybe 2 duelists instead of 1 duelist, or maybe they would make a 5th role. And if you were going into a game, you would have to pick the role that you were gonna queue as, and you have to play a character in that role. Well, I do understand that this removes some of the competitive anxiety that people feel, plus allows people to hyper main characters that they really like. They don't have to ever risk their jet getting taken from them, or their omen, or whatever the case may be. I do feel like it creates a situation where compositions are artificially picked by Riot themselves and leaves a lot less room for flexibility. Like, imagine if there was a double initiator, double controller comp, or a quad duelist comp, or whatever the case may be. If it works, it's kind of cool to see that sort of creativity. And while this might stifle creativity, it might be worth it, but I really want to know your opinion about it. There's not one perfect answer here, and it does get pretty murky. But as usual, I want to know your insight and take on agent bans in the comments down below. Now moving on to the next question. On the topic of agent bans, can we expect something related to choosing maps or banning maps with the addition of new maps? Now Ziegler responds, quote, "I think for competitive play, we are investigating both. There are a couple of things that we definitely do not know if we like about banning. For example, you can practice competitively on a small set of characters and have them all banned out, and that may feel strategic, but also may feel like it limits the exposure of certain characters. It is also a nice tool where if there's a character that gets out of control in a meta, it can help to curve it back in when you ban that character. In a similar way for maps, when the pool gets too large, it does help to have banning to be able to cut down the number of maps you and your team are specifically practicing on. I know that banning maps especially is something that a lot more requested inside of pro play or competitive play than anything else. We are probably more likely to investigate map banning or map drafting in the future, more so than character banning, so we're looking into it too." So basically, the character banning is something they're already really looking into, and map banning is something that is even more likely to happen than character banning. So that's right, ladies and gentlemen, we can perma dodge Icebox. Let's fucking go! But all joking aside, the next question was specifically talking about COVID-19 affecting the progression weight. Jesus Christ, sometimes my old speech impediment that I had back in like elementary school comes out where I can't say my R's, wet. Anyways, moving on. And as a TLDR, basically he said that COVID-19 actually did push back some of the work and some of the plans that they already expected to be released, so they're a little bit behind as far as that's concerned. The next question was a really interesting one, asking if we should expect new game modes, seasonal events, or even limited time modes such as snipers only, deathmatch, etc. And they responded saying, quote, "We released a few different modes such as deathmatch, and we will continue to release modes as we go along at a frequency that we feel is right. Obviously, what we don't want to do is create so many modes that no one plays them, so we are looking into ways to cycle modes in and out of the game." So basically, they just don't want to overwhelm us with game modes so that if you tried to find a game in a game mode, you're just waiting freaking 20 minutes. They want to make sure that if there is an alternate game mode to competitive or quick play, it is something that a lot of people will be playing. So it's just better for everyone. In and out, nice, rapid games. And remember, I want that 2v2 wingman mode. Come on, Riot, please. Now, the next question was about event-related cosmetics, and Ziegler stated that they will probably be throwing in extra XP as well as cosmetics into big event-specific missions around Axe. And the idea of event-related missions sounds pretty cool to me, just something to kind of mess around with, and getting a free cosmetic on top of that would be freaking amazing. Now, the last really important thing we're going to talk about in this interview is a question about Sky's low pick rate and how other characters are going to be balanced in the future. But Riot Ziegler actually responded in an interesting way. I'm not going to get into the intricacies because he does kind of say a lot of the things that we've already covered, but he does say that a lot of the balances that they've done in the past have mainly been done around power level and not how fun or engaging a character is to play. He said this at the end in quote, We are definitely open to the idea on how we change things to make them more interesting, appealing, and fun to play, end quote. And specifically, he's talking about the idea that some characters just might not feel good to play, might not feel very fun to play, and they're open to changing characters to make them more enjoyable overall. And it has nothing to do with power level, it just has to do with enjoyment. So that's a very interesting take because we haven't really heard that before, how they might actually be tailoring the balance a little bit or tuning some things just to make them feel good. And I'm not entirely sure how I feel about it, but if you can make a character feel good without dramatically changing the balance of other characters incorrectly in the process, then I'm probably all for it. Definitely let me know what you think about that in the comments down below. And also down below, you'll find the link to the GameLeap website where we have helped thousands and thousands of players surpass their limits and climb multiple ranks with ease. Don't miss out on this insane opportunity to climb over and over and over again as you surpass your limits down below. But thank you so much for coming by. I really hope you enjoyed the video. That's all I got for you today. I freaking love your faces, and I'll see you tomorrow.